Hey guys, tonight, we slip quietly into a different kind of darkness. No monsters under the bed, just a man with an axe, a job to do, and a village that would rather not make eye contact. You're not dreaming in color tonight. Everything is brown, muddy boots, smoke-smeared sky, and the crusted leather of a stranger's hood. He arrived before dawn, said nothing, left deeper footprints than you'd think possible. And now, well, you're standing where he stood. You're the one with the axe. The man who walked away didn't die. He retired, quietly. That's how it always is for people like you. No celebration, no handshake. He left behind his tools, his silence, and a bed that smells faintly of iron and rosemary. And you didn't volunteer. But the town needed someone, and the mayor's eyes never left your calloused hands. You were the tanner's apprentice. You worked with hides soaked in urine and bark for years, always near rot and heat. People already avoided you, said you stank of death anyway. Now you've simply made it official, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with your location and what time it is there. It's fun knowing where we're all falling asleep tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the rooster. The sky is a deep, bruised blue, and a fog hangs heavy over the cabbage fields. The town is quieter than usual, like it knows. Your boots squelch in the wet earth as you make your way to the small stone hut that used to belong to the executioner before you. It's just outside the town limits, near the old shrine to Saint Odilo, the one that leans ever so slightly, like it's had enough of bearing witness. Inside the hut, it's cold and oddly neat. A wooden rack holds 2 axes, one chipped, one sharp. There's also a rusting sword, a set of thick gloves, and a square of black cloth folded neatly on the table. You know what that is. Everyone knows what that is. The hood. It smells faintly of beeswax and sweat. You pick it up, and for a moment, your reflection stares back at you in the blade of the axe leaning beside it. The previous man, his name was Dieter, left no letter, no instructions. Just these tools, some salted meat, and a jug of sour wine. The silence speaks volumes. You try on the gloves. They're stiff-stained, dark, but they fit. That feels like an omen. Or maybe just uncomfortable leather. Outside, the town slowly stirs. A cart creaks by. A dog barks once, then stops. People are pretending today is normal, but you know better. By sundown, you'll be at the scaffold, and someone will not walk home. You rehearse the motion hands, gripping the axe arms, rising elbows locked. You've done this before. Not on a person, of course, but on pigs. On large, panicking animals who squealed and thrashed. Still, when the blade met bone, you didn't flinch. That's probably why they picked you. And yet a shadow of doubt curls in your chest. The kind that smells like cold metal and old blood. The mayor comes just after noon, his boots polished, his breath sour with nerves. He doesn't step inside the hut. He stands at the doorway like the threshold itself might bite. You know what to do? He asks. You nod. He hesitates. We usually give them a chance to speak. Just before. You nod again. He waits, then walks off muttering about cabbage and prayers. The condemned man is someone you don't know. Or maybe you do. He's been locked in the stocks for 3 days, face blistered from sun and spit. Theft, they said, and a stabbing. He's barely 30, missing 3 teeth, and still glares at anyone who passes. He doesn't look scared. That worries you more. As evening falls, a crowd gathers. Small at first, children, merchants, a toothless woman humming. Then more come. Farmers with cabbage on their breath. Bakers with flour on their sleeves. All eyes on the scaffold. Your scaffold. You walk slowly, wearing the hood. Your boots are clean, your gloves creak, and in your hand, the axe feels absurdly heavy, like it knows this is real now. The townspeople part for you without a word, like reeds in wind. The condemned is already there, kneeling, hands bound. The priest whispers to him. He spits. The priest flinches. You take your place behind him. You raise the axe. You wait for the signal. And then it's done. The crowd exhales as one. The priest steps back. The mayor nods at you once. You do not look at the body. You do not look at the crowd. You wipe the blade clean on your apron, then descend the steps without breaking stride. The strange thing, the silence after. You think people would cheer or cry or at least talk, but they don't. They let you pass, eyes low. Even the drunk who yelled something about devils goes quiet when you walk by. You reach your hut. You take off the hood. You place the axe back on the rack. You sit, and then you hear it. A knock. Not at your door, at the edge of your mind. A soft knock from the part of you that knows this is only the first. There will be more. Faces you know. People you liked. People who'll beg. People who won't. Welcome to your new life. You run your fingers along the edge of the blade. It's already nicked, though you couldn't tell while swinging. That first execution, it was clean outwardly. No cries, no struggle. But the axe, like your memory, tells a different story. And as the sun burns down through the slats in your roof, you realize you'll need to care for it. Now your tools, your legacy. The rack against the wall groans slightly when you pull down the larger axe. It's old, probably 2-3 owners before you. You wonder how many necks it's kissed. The edge has to be maintained at a precise angle. Not too sharp, you don't want it chipping on bone. Not too dull, you're not trying to saw firewood. Just sharp enough to slide through skin muscle and tendon with one committed motion. Like cutting a rope. Like slicing into a memory you don't want to keep. You open the small chest under the table. Inside, wrapped in cloth and irony, are your maintenance supplies. A whetstone oiled linen beeswax. A small hammer. You begin sharpening in slow circular strokes. Each motion is oddly soothing, meditative. The scrape of stone against steel reminds you of your old life tanning hides, scraping flesh from skin. The tools are different. The job unsettlingly similar. And here's the first real lesson. Your job isn't just to kill. It's to kill cleanly, with precision. The people may hate you, but they'll hate you more if you fumble. There's a phrase whispered in town squares from London to Lubeck. Botched beheadings bring riots. Okay, maybe not in those exact words, but close enough. One swing, that's the rule. You turn now to the rope. It's coiled like a sleeping snake in the far corner. Hemp thick, frayed in places. You test its give. You'll need to cut fresh strands from the stores behind the stable. Some days hanging will be the sentence. You'll have to measure the drop to the prisoner's weight. Too short, and they'll strangle for minutes. Too long, and well, the head might separate. That's awkward for everyone. There's an executioner's notebook, 2 thin parchment pages tied together with gut string. In it are rough diagrams of knots, drawings of gallows, even a table estimating drop lengths based on body weight. It's written in 3 different hands. You recognize Dieter's from the shaky, ink-blotted script. The older entries are steadier, more ruthless. And then there's the sword. It's ceremonial mostly, used only for noble executions. Clean, double-edged, balanced beautifully. You lift it carefully and give it a test swing. It hums through the air like a bird refusing to land. You place it back into its scabbard with a surprising reverence, as if it belongs in a storybook, not in your corner of dirt and dried blood. Your tools are the extension of your mercy and your cruelty. You care for them like a farmer sharpens his scythe not for joy, but out of respect for the harvest. Only here the crop is always singular. You also discover a box of salts and powders. Some of these you realize are for cleaning. Others, not so much. One packet has a faint scent of myrrh and copper. You suspect it's used when the body must smell pleasant for those rare executions done for nobles or in court. It doesn't fool anyone. But decorum is important when you're murdering someone with embroidery around their collar. You roll up a piece of cord and wonder about the man it last bound. Then you shake the thought away. Emotional inventory gets you killed in this job, or worse, gets you sloppy. And a sloppy executioner is remembered in the worst way. A knock. Again. This time it's the blacksmith's boy. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. My pa says you'll need new hinges for the gallows trap door. Wants to know if you want 'em iron or brass. Brass rusts, you say. The boy nods and leaves. No questions. No thanks. Just like that. You go back to the rack. The gloves, heavy leather lined with sheep's wool, still reek of old sweat. You debate washing them. You decide against it. There's a superstition about cleaning too much between jobs, as if washing away the scent of death might anger whatever keeps your blade steady. You also find a curious item in the chest, a small bell. Tiny silver, almost delicate. At first you think it might be a token from a victim, but then you remember a bell tied to a body's toe, to check for life. Some executioners used it. Not everyone trusted the silence. A fringe custom. Yes, but you're not exactly swimming in normal anymore. You sit down at the edge of your cot, and for the first time today, exhale like you mean it. The tools are oiled. The blades are sharp. The rope's measured. The trap door awaits its hinges. You've done everything you can. But sleep doesn't come easy. Your dreams aren't nightmares, not exactly. Just repetitions. The swing, the wet thud. The moment after when no one cheers. You see the crowd over and over, silent as statues, and that part unnerves you more than anything else. Historians still argue whether executioners in medieval Europe were seen more as holy instruments or feared outcasts. In your town, it's clear you're a necessity no one speaks to. A guardian of order and an unspoken threat. You're both doctor and disease, which means you must carry the weight of cleanliness, ritual, preparation, precision. Because once the axe falls, it's too late to wonder if you brought the wrong one. Tomorrow, you're told it'll be branding. Not death, but worse in a way. The tools will be different, the stakes equally high, and the crowd still watching. You wake to the smell of hot iron and wet clay. Morning mist rolls low over the fields like it's too tired to rise, and even the birds seem slower today. But you don't get to sleep in, not anymore. Today you're not taking a life, you're marking one. Branding is a strange art. You'd think it would be simple heat metal, press metal to skin done. But the truth is, the wrong heat, the wrong angle, the wrong pressure, and you're left with a mess. Infection, incomplete marks, pain without purpose, which oddly enough is not your job. Not entirely. They bring the man in chains. He's young with dirt-caked fingernails and wrists that look like he's been picking at the manacles all night. Cattle thief, second offense. First time he lost 2 fingers. This time he gets the brand. The letter T burned just beneath the collarbone. In this region, T stands for thief. In another town, it might be F for felon, or even a symbol shaped like a twisted cross. Branding is many things, but standard isn't one of them. You lay out the tools on the iron slab near the forge behind the jail. The brand itself looks almost like a tuning fork, though you know it won't be making music anytime soon. You hold it to the coals, watching it glow from brown to orange to that perfect devilish red. Timing is everything. Too early and it won't take. Too late and you'll be cauterizing bone. The man trembles. You don't speak to him. That's not the tradition here. Some executioners do. They whisper prayers, offer advice, even apologize. But here, silence is part of the sentence. You're not a man in this moment. You're an extension of justice, of flame. When the metal is ready, you don't hesitate. You press it to his chest. There's a hiss, a scream, and the distinct smell of pork left too long on the fire. You count silently. 1, 2, 3, then off. The shape is clear, deep but not ragged. A good mark. He will carry it forever, and everyone who sees it will know this man took what wasn't his and survived. There are strange perks to the job. You're paid more than most craftsmen, enough to afford meat twice a week, even butter. And you have a certain authority. Not respect, not exactly, but presence. When you walk into the tavern, people shift. Not out of courtesy, but instinct. Like animals sensing a storm in the bones of a tree. But it comes at a cost. You're not allowed to buy bread from the baker directly. They leave it on a stone at the edge of the stall. You place coins, take the loaf nod. No words. At market, no one hands you the goods. No one touches your skin. Some say it's because of ritual impurity that you handle death, you must be tainted. Others claim it's just habit and fear. You tried once early on to shake a man's hand after he complimented your dog. He recoiled like you'd spit fire, and that was that. You're permitted to own property more than most peasants. The hut came with land, a quarter acre, mostly nettles and clay. But it's yours. You could grow onions, maybe raise chickens. You don't. Not yet. You're not sure how long you'll last here. Because the truth is, executioners don't retire to warm applause. Most are quietly replaced. Some are run off after a bad job. Some vanish. There's an old tale about an executioner in Prague who simply disappeared one winter. All they found was his axe buried in a tree stump and a trail of red footprints leading into the river. You've also heard rumors of bribes nobles paying to delay executions or change the method. One even allegedly hired his own private headsman, one better trained, more discreet. Historians still argue whether these stories are exaggerations or quiet truths buried in centuries of discomfort. There's a ledger in the town hall locked behind the clerk's desk. It lists every execution since the bishop granted the charter. You've only seen it once. The ink is faded, but the names are real. And beside each, a method: gallows, sword, wheel, fire, simple, final. Your name is now written in the same book. Not under condemned, under executor. That more than anything made it real. That night after the branding, you walk to the edge of town. There's a rock you like, just past the weir. Smooth, flat, perfect for sitting. You listen to the water tumble over stone. It sounds nothing like screams. You watch the sky fade from amber to violet. Stars arrive like shy guests at a wake. You wonder if the man you branded will sleep tonight. You wonder if you will. Your dog, an old mutt with one eye, curls up beside you. You didn't bring him here. He showed up 2 days after your first execution, sat by your door and stayed. You named him nothing. Because you needed to name something, and that was the only word that felt honest. He's the only one who licks your hand. From your perch, you can see the gallows platform. Bare now, silent. It creaks when the wind shifts, like it's stretching. You know the villagers tell their children that bad behavior gets you a visit from the man in the hood. They make you a bogeyman, a bedtime warning. Brush your hair or the headsman will come. You'd laugh if it didn't sting so much. You lie back on the rock and stare at the stars. There are constellations you half remember, stories of heroes, of gods, of hunters. You don't belong to any of them. You're the one who ends their stories. You wake to the sound of pigs. Not squealing, just shuffling around in the muck outside your hut, snorting like they know something you don't. The butcher's penned them too close again. Every few days he moves the fence in inch by inch, like he wants to see how close he can get to the man who swings the axe. Or maybe it's just the only land left no one dares claim. Either way, you don't mind the pigs. They don't flinch when they see your face. They don't whisper. Inside, you sit at your small table, rubbing the sleep from your eyes with one hand and gripping a half loaf of stale rye with the other. It's hard as a brick. You could probably break a window with it if the wind didn't already do that last week. The bread, like everything else, comes to you indirectly, left at the edge of the market stall. Coins placed silently. You nod. They nod. You both pretend that's enough. The wind howls today. It drags leaves up into the air like it's trying to start a dance with no music. You pull your cloak tighter and prepare to walk to town. There's a meeting, a formal one. Someone's been appointed to oversee your service. Not a supervisor exactly, more like a liaison, an intermediary between you and the people who won't speak to you. His name is Otto, a small man with big ideas and bigger shoes. He's dressed in wool far too fine for the weather, and he greets you like he's shaking hands with a storm cloud. You're doing fine work, he says. You haven't said a word. Clean swing. Efficient. We appreciate that. The council appreciates that. You nod. Otto glances around the room, notices no one else is within earshot, and leans in slightly. Your father was good at this. Efficient, never sentimental. You say nothing, but your hands curl slightly. Because here's the truth, your father didn't want this life for you. He may have done the work, may have raised you near the gallows and the blood and the salt-soaked aprons, but he never once told you to follow him. In fact, he told you to run if they ever asked. He knew the weight. He wore it in his spine, bent like an old tree. And yet when the time came, the village remembered your name, not your father's warnings. They said, it runs in the family. That's how you got here. The records show a long line of executioners from the same bloodline. Fathers to sons, uncles to nephews. Some towns even made it law that the position must stay in the family, as if death prefers familiar hands. One man in France allegedly branded his own brother for theft. Another in Bavaria executed his cousin for desertion. Historians still argue whether these stories are true or folkloric embellishments, meant to make executioners seem more tragic or more monstrous. The lines blur easily. In your family, the story is murky. You remember your father coming home with blood on his boots and silence in his mouth. He never told you what happened at the scaffold. He only ever said, "Don't watch." So you peeked through the slats in the fence. You saw the hood, the swing, the crowd's collective sigh. You saw the way no one met his eyes afterward. You thought it was power then, a kind of dark magic. You know better now. Otto continues speaking, still not looking at you quite directly. There's another one coming, tomorrow, early morning. Not death, just flogging, public. You nod again. This is your version of polite conversation. As you turn to go, Otto says one last thing. Your father lasted 32 years. You think you'll beat that, you don't answer. Because you know your father didn't last. Not really. He just never stopped. There's a difference. Back at your hut, you find a small bundle left on your doorstep. It's wrapped in cloth tied with twine. You expect food or something dead, but inside is a loaf of soft bread still warm, and a single folded note. It reads, "You did it clean." He didn't suffer. Thank you. No name, no signature. You stare at the bread for a long time. You set it on the table like it's sacred. No one's ever thanked you before. That night, you dream of your father. He's sitting on the same stool you now use, sharpening the same axe. He turns and says, "Don't make it your identity." Then he disappears. In the morning, you prepare for the flogging. It's a curious ceremony, less final than execution, but no less dramatic. The scaffold's still used, but there's no rope, no blade. Just a whip. Leather knotted, weighted at the tips with small lead beads. The man today is a gambler. Owed coin to the wrong merchant. Cheated 3 others. They asked for 10 lashes. You try not to meet his eyes as you tie his arms to the post. He spits at your feet. You don't flinch. Each lash makes a sound like tearing parchment. The crowd reacts with each one, some grimace, some smile. You keep your grip steady. By lash 7, his knees are giving out. By 10, he's unconscious. You cut the ropes and 2 men drag him off like a sack of flour. You clean the whip. You hang it back in the shed beside the branding irons and shackles. Your hands are starting to blister. That evening, you visit your father's grave for the first time since taking the job. It's unmarked, just a rise in the soil at the far edge of the woods. He asked for no cross, no stone, no name. You kneel beside it anyway. You whisper, "I didn't want this." The trees don't answer, but the wind shifts. And somewhere in it, you imagine your father's voice. None of us did. That's the point. You're awakened by a knock that's more of a thud. Heavy, slow, as if the person on the other side isn't entirely sure they want to be there. You open the door to find a soldier standing stiff as a barn beam helmet tucked under his eyes, not meeting yours. "You're needed," he says, then adds almost like an afterthought, "for training." You raise an eyebrow. He clears his throat. The council wants the methods passed down, standardized. There it is. You don't ask questions. You just put on your boots, grab your gloves, and follow him down the path toward the southern field where the practice dummies are set up. Straw men with sackcloth faces slumped against wooden poles like they've already given up. Waiting there is another young man, barely more than a boy. He wears a leather apron 2 sizes too big and carries himself like someone trying to look tougher than he feels. His name, the soldier says, is Matthias. You're to train him. This is new. In some regions, executioners were forbidden from taking apprentices outside their own bloodline. In others, they were encouraged to pass on the trade, lest the village be left with no one willing to swing the blade. Historians still debate whether this formalized brutality helped refine justice or merely polished its cruelty. In this case, it seems the council has chosen both an heir just in case and a witness in case things go wrong. Matthias smiles nervously. You do not smile back. Not because you dislike him, but because this isn't a job to approach with grins and handshakes. You hand him a practice axe. It's wooden dulled at the edge, but heavy enough to demand respect. You gesture toward the first straw dummy. He swings and misses. You correct his grip. Thumbs over fingers. Elbows slightly bent, but locked on impact. You show him the stance, feet shoulder-width apart. Knees, soft weight, balanced. You tell him where to look, not at the face, never at the face, but at the base of the neck. the hinge where head meets spine. He swings again, better this time. The blade sinks into straw. The sackcloth rips. You take the axe and demonstrate once cleanly. The dummy topples. Straw spills out like guts. He watches you closely, eyes wide. You let him try again. All morning you work like this. Cut, correct, repeat. It's strange speaking so much. You'd forgotten how your voice sounds when not clouded by ritual or silence. Matthias asks questions too many, probably, but they're earnest. What do you do if they flinch? Has anyone ever run? What's it feel like right after? You answer briefly. You grab them. Yes, heavy. He seems disappointed. He wants something more poetic, more haunted. But the truth is simpler. It's a job. A bloody, necessary, often soul-dulling job. After practice, you sit on a stump to rest. Matthias sits nearby, uninvited but not unwelcome. He pulls out a hunk of cheese and tears it in half, offering you a piece. You hesitate, then take it. He doesn't flinch. That means something. He chews loudly, then says, "My uncle was executed. That's why I wanted to learn." You raise an eyebrow again. He said it was fair. Said the man who did it was steady, merciful. You know who that was. Your father. You don't say anything, but you nod. Later that day, back in your hut, you begin thinking about the tools differently. Not just as extensions of you, but as lessons. Teaching materials. The axe isn't just a blade. It's geometry. Physics. The gallows isn't just a structure, it's engineering. Rope, tension, weight, force, distribution. Every aspect of your job is part craft, part calculation. There's a box under the bed you hadn't dared open until now. Inside are drawings, sketches your father made. Diagrams of the gallows. Notes on how high to raise the block for shorter men. Diagrams of the wheel with annotations on how long bones last under pressure. It's grim but technical. Like a surgeon's journal, except the surgery always ends the same. You realize with a small twist in your gut that your father did want you to have this. Not the job, but the knowledge, the precision, the sense that if this has to be done, it must be done well. The council sends word that a noble may soon require your services. You're told nothing else. Not the name, not the crime. Only that the method will be sword. That tells you plenty. Swords are for ceremony, prestige. They carry less blood and more weight. So you sharpen it. Carefully, lovingly in a way. The blade is longer than your axe, thinner at the tip, but balanced like it's meant to be part of your arm. You test it on a hanging branch, clean through. No resistance. That night you sit by candlelight and review everything your father left behind. Notebooks, folded scraps of linen with dried blood, one small vial of black powder labeled for moments of mercy. You're not entirely sure what that means. You decide not to ask. You also realize for the first time that you're starting to speak to Matthias in your dreams. Not your father. Not the condemned. Him. He's asking you questions even in sleep about pressure points and timing and crowd control. And you answer. Which means the job is sinking in. The next morning, the pigs are gone. Moved. The fence rolled back. You wonder if the butcher's finally learned his lesson, or if Matthias had a word with him. Either way, it's the quietest it's been in weeks. You sharpen the axe one last time. You oil the rope. You clean your gloves. You look out the window and see for a brief moment the world without blood or guilt or duty. It doesn't last. But it's enough to keep going. The body twitches. That's the part they don't warn you about. You've just delivered your third execution. It was meant to be simple, quick, precise, clean. The man had been caught murdering a merchant with a blacksmith's hammer. Open and shut case. Witnesses, confession, no drama. You'd done your job exactly as expected, raised the axe, found the right spot, committed. And still, the twitch. It's not uncommon. The body spasms after the head comes off, sometimes violently. Arms jerk, legs kick. The crowd gasps every time, as if death is fighting back, as if they want it to be something more mythic, more haunted than it is. You step off the platform, your gloves sticky with sweat. You don't look back, but you know. The man's hands are still curling into fists blindly, like he's trying to hold on to something. You wipe your blade. You hear someone vomit in the crowd. Back at your hut, you sit down heavily and stare at your hands. They aren't trembling. That's worse. You wonder how many more it will take before you feel nothing at all. A soft knock at the door. It's Matthias, holding a loaf of bread and looking awkward as ever. I thought you might want something warm. You nod. He stays silent. The bread's a little burned on the bottom, but fresh. You eat together in the quiet. Then he says it. What if the head doesn't come off clean? You chew slower, swallow, wipe your hands on your apron. It happens, you reply. You swing again. His face pales. Twice, sometimes 3. He looks away. What if they scream, they don't, you say? Not after the first one. But the crowd does. He blinks like that hadn't occurred to him. Because that's the truth of it. You're not just performing a duty. You're performing, period. The people watch every motion, every bead of sweat, every heartbeat you try to hide. You are the final act of a tragic play. And if you flub your lines, miss your mark, it stays with them. And you. In Lübeck, you once heard an executioner needed 4 swings to finish a noble. The blade dulled. The prisoner screamed. The crowd surged. They buried the headsman the next day, minus his own. Historians still argue whether that's myth or just poetic justice passed down through gossip. But the moral is clear: your swing must be true. You remember the first time you saw a botched execution. You were 10. Your father took you, though he made you sit behind the fence, behind the crowd. You couldn't see much, but you heard everything. The first chop, then the second, the scream, then a third, then silence. No applause, just murmurs. And afterward, no one spoke to your father for a month. He drank that whole month. You go to your tools that evening and recheck everything. The axe is sharp. The backup axe, rarely used, is polished. You oil the sword, hang the rope to dry, clean the branding irons, even though you won't need them tomorrow. And still the twitch lingers in your mind. You lie awake longer than usual. Outside, the wind has picked up, rattling the shutters. Nothing curls up near your feet tonight. Not even Nothing, the dog. He's probably found a quieter patch of ground to rest on. You can't blame him. The nightmares come just before sleep. You dream you're swinging again and again, but the head never detaches. The man keeps looking up at you, silently mouthing something you can't hear. Your father watches from the crowd, arms crossed, and slowly shakes his head. You jolt awake, heart pounding. There's a soft rustle in the corner. You light the oil lamp. The axe leans just where you left it. The blade gleams a little too brightly, like it's waiting. In the morning, you're called to the square for another execution. This time it's someone you know, or used to know. Her name is Agnes, a woman who once sold herbs at the edge of the market. A healer, some said. A witch, others whispered. The priest claims she poisoned a local knight with tincture of belladonna. Whether by malice or mistake, you don't know. No one tells you the full story. Only the method hanging. Hanging is a different kind of cruelty. Less direct, more uncertain. You have to calculate the drop based on the person's weight and frame. Too short, and they'll strangle legs kicking for minutes. Too long, and the force may decapitate. Neither is acceptable. There's a chart in your father's notebook. You follow it precisely. On the scaffold, Agnes refuses the priest. She looks up at you with hollow eyes and says, "I knew your mother." You freeze, but only for a second. The lever releases. The trapdoor falls. The rope jerks. Her feet twitch, but not for long. You descend the platform in silence. The wind picks up again harder now, sending dust into the crowd's eyes. That night, you sit with your father's journal open in your lap. You find a page that simply reads, "The second swing teaches you more than the first ever could." You wonder if it's meant as a warning or a reassurance, because today there was no second swing, just a rope and a ghost. The house they gave you stands just beyond the old stone wall, where the land slopes into a tangled meadow no one has claimed in years. The grass is tall, yellowed at the tips, and full of humming things that go silent when you walk past. There's a narrow stream nearby, too small for fishing, too slow to carry anything away. It whispers more than it flows. It's a good house in a practical sense, larger than most. Thick walls, a sturdy roof patched with tin, a cellar that stays cool year-round. But make no mistake, it's not a gift. It's a perimeter. A reminder that even if you are technically part of the town, you are never truly in it. No one lives near you, not by coincidence. There are stories that say the ground beneath your home is cursed, that crops won't grow right, that animals refuse to give birth near the stones. You don't believe that, but you've also stopped trying to keep chickens. The last two simply disappeared. No feathers, no trail, just gone. Even nothing avoids the barn now. You spend the morning chopping wood, not because you need to, but because it helps. The rhythm, the clean break of log against axe. There's comfort in destruction when it follows rules, predictable ones. You stack the wood neatly beside the door, knowing full well no one will ever ask to borrow a piece. Later, you walk into town. You're low on lamp oil and salted meat. The usual quiet follows you down the road, the hush of recognition, of avoided glances. Children stop playing. Dogs bark. A woman drops a bucket and doesn't bother picking it up until you're gone. At the market, things are as ritualized as ever. You set your coin down on the edge of the stall. The merchant, a man named Tobias, places a wrapped parcel in the same spot. He doesn't look at you. He never does. But today, something different happens. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, tugs on your cloak. "You're the one who made my uncle sleep," she says. Her eyes are big, round, searching. You freeze. Her mother pulls her back with a sharp whisper and a look of pure panic. The girl doesn't cry. She just stares at you. Not with fear, but with the quiet curiosity of someone who's seen a monster and wants to understand its shape. You don't respond. You simply nod once and walk away. That night, you sit by the fire with a plate of boiled carrots and bread that tastes like damp stone. You let your thoughts drift to the house, to the girl, to the way your new home creaks at night even when there's no wind. They say executioners are given land to keep them close enough to be useful, but far enough to stay forgotten. Your father's house was the same, tucked behind the hill beyond the reach of the town bells. You remember how he'd watched them from a distance, listening to the peal of mass like a man outside a locked gate. He never went to church, not once that you recall, though he had a cross above the door, carved into the wood, with the point of his own dagger. You haven't put one up yet. You're not sure it would help. Sometimes at night you see lights in the trees near the meadow. Not torches too low to be held, just small glimmers flickering like fireflies. You've never gone to look. Some things are best left unexplained. But one night curiosity gets the better of you. You take a lantern and follow the edge of the stream. The ground is soft, damp, with dew. Nothing follows, though you can hear his distant bark once or twice. You cross the meadow, stepping carefully through waist-high grass until you reach a clearing. And there you find it. Not ghosts, not demons, just markers. Rough wooden stakes sunk into the ground. Dozens of them. Some tall, some barely more than splinters. Each with a cloth scrap or a bundle of twine. Offerings, memorials for the dead. For your dead. This is where the town buries those you execute. Not in consecrated ground. Not under marble or church bells. Just here where the soil is quiet and the stars don't judge. Some are marked. Most are not. You stand there a long time, the lantern swaying in your hand. You wonder who laid the offerings. You wonder if your father ever stood in this same place. The wind picks up, rustling the cloth on the stakes like whispers. You turn and walk back to your house, the path somehow clearer than before. You don't tell anyone what you saw. The next morning, Otto arrives. He stands at your door, hat in hand, sweat already pooling at his collar. Another one, he says, grimacing. Tomorrow. Dueling death. A noble's son. That explains the pacing. Otto shifts, uncomfortable. The family's requested dignity. A swift sword. Private affair. You nod. He hesitates. They'll be watching. Of course they will. When he leaves, you unhook the sword from the wall. You sharpen it with care, checking the balance, the weight, the grip. You polish it until the reflection shows more than just your face. It shows the mask you've grown into. And as night falls, you light a single candle and stare at the door. You don't know if this is your life, or if you're just passing through it. But outside, the meadow waits. And beyond it, the town. And all of it somehow rests on your shoulders. You don't sleep the night before a noble execution. The sword is ready, honed to a whisper, its edge almost invisible in candlelight. Your gloves are cleaned, the black hood folded precisely. You even shave your stubble with the side of a whetstone, something your father only did on days he wanted his hands to feel real again. Before dawn, you carry everything to the walled courtyard behind the mayor's hall. Private, just as Otto said. No crowd this time. No scaffold. Just 4 stone pillars, a square of swept earth, and 2 torches sputtering in the breeze. The condemned is already there, barely a man. Pale, noble-featured eyes glazed like he's still waiting for someone to say it was all a mistake. He fought another young lord over something petty, a wager, a woman land no one cared about, until it was soaked in blood. The duel was illegal, so he dies. His mother stands by the far pillar, flanked by 2 guards and a priest. She's wearing deep blue mourning without black. She doesn't cry. She watches you like she's memorizing every breath. You don't speak. That's not your role. The priest does the talking last rites in Latin words even the boy doesn't seem to hear. The mayor, puffed up like a frightened rooster, gives the formal nod. You step forward. The boy flinches when you lift the sword. His lips move. You think you hear the word please, but it's swallowed by the wind. You make it quick. 1 clean motion, no twitch. The body folds at the knees. The head rolls slightly, then stops. A servant moves forward with a cloth. You step back into shadow. The mother doesn't scream. She only nods once as if something inevitable has just completed its course. You don't wait for thanks. Back in your hut, you clean the sword again, though there's barely a speck to wipe away. Noble blood looks the same, but it's treated differently. You're paid triple today. It arrives in a pouch on your doorstep wrapped in silk. You throw the silk into the fire. The next day, Otto visits. Again. Good work, he says. They're satisfied, very dignified. You don't answer. Otto adjusts his coat. Listen, the council's asking if you'd be willing to oversee alternate methods. You know, instruct the guard in gallows construction, use of the wheel, that sort of thing. You tilt your head. He rushes on. Purely procedural, nothing binding, just if we ever needed it. You say nothing, but the look is enough. The wheel. You've never used it. Neither did your father, though you remember him whispering about it once, like saying the word summoned something foul. The breaking wheel, also called the Catherine wheel, is reserved for the worst crimes. Treason, parricide, infanticide. It's not a quick death. Bones are shattered one by one with an iron bar. The body is then braided into the spokes of the wheel and hoisted upright for public display. Some die quickly, others don't. Historians still argue whether the wheel was used more as a deterrent or a spectacle. Either way, the cruelty is precise and unforgettable. You tell Otto to leave the drawings by the door. He leaves quickly. You stare at the package he drops off. Inside are diagrams, blue ink on parchment, measurements, instructions for assembly, and at the bottom, a note only if necessary. You put it under the bed, and you hope you never see it again. That night, you hear something in the barn. Not the wind, not the creak of aging beams, something heavier. You light a lantern and step outside. The air is thick with the smell of wet straw and wood smoke. Nothing your dog growls low, ears flat. You raise the lantern. Inside you find a man, drunk, crying, curled up in the corner between the hay bales. It's the brother of someone you executed. The thief from your first day. He doesn't try to fight. He just looks at you, eyes red and hollow, and says, "Why him? You don't have an answer." He weeps until he passes out. You let him sleep. In the morning, he's gone. Left nothing behind except a half-empty bottle and a shoe print in the mud. You wash the barn floor with water from the stream. Not because of the mess, because of the sorrow. It lingers. The next week brings no executions. You sharpen your tools anyway. The mayor's son breaks his leg, and the town healer asks if you have any herbs for pain. You don't. But you remember your father once mixing vinegar and willow bark. You try it. It works. Word spreads, quietly. People start leaving small offerings. Not gifts exactly, but gestures. A loaf, a ribbon, a carved button. None are left directly. You find them on your doorstep, tucked in fence posts tied to the low tree by the stream. It doesn't make you part of the village, but it makes you less alone. One evening, Matthias brings you a package wrapped in rough linen. Inside is a small hand-carved box. Inside that, a blade. It's not for executions. It's for you. A knife for whittling, or skinning rabbits, or carving letters into wood. I made it, he says a little shy. Figured you should have something that wasn't work. You hold it, testing the weight. It's good. You nod. Thanks. He hesitates. Then, you're not as scary as they say. You raise an eyebrow. I'm worse. He laughs. And you realize it's the first time you've laughed in weeks. The fire crackles. The sword gleams. The wheel diagram sleeps beneath your bed. And for one night, you feel something like peace. There's a festival in the town square, and for once, you're not required to attend or avoid. It's the midsummer feast, all honey cakes and barley ale children with wildflowers braided in their hair and fiddlers playing the same 4 songs in different orders. Smoke curls from roasting lambs, and the air is thick with laughter and spilled cider. You stay back, of course. That's the unspoken rule. Your house may be close enough to smell the bread baking, but not close enough to share in it. Still from your hilltop, you can hear the singing. You can see the lanterns hung in the shape of stars. For a while, that's enough. But just before sunset, something strange happens. A knock, light, tentative. You open the door, and there's a young man in livery you don't recognize. Polished boots, silver clasp at his collar. Clearly someone's servant. He holds out an envelope sealed with red wax. There's to be a dinner, he says, for officials and honored tradesmen. The magistrate thought, you should attend. You take the letter. Inside is a folded note simply worded, your presence is requested at the midsummer feast. You have served with distinction. A seat has been reserved. You stare at it for a long time. No one invites the executioner to dinner. You almost burn the note. Almost. Instead, you wash your hands. Change into your cleanest tunic. You leave the hood and gloves behind. Let them wonder. When you arrive, the reactions are immediate. Forks pause mid-air. Wine dribbles from frozen goblets. A child whispers. A mother shushes him too loudly. But no one tells you to leave. They've set your seat at the edge of the long table. Not at the center, not among the magistrates or merchants, but not alone either. You take it. You nod to no one in particular. The food is good. Duck with plum sauce, honeyed turnips, even a small custard tart wobbling like it's unsure if it belongs here. You eat in silence. Then comes the toast. The magistrate, rosy-cheeked, overfed, raises his cup. To service of all kinds, he says. Even the difficult kind. There's a beat. Then scattered clapping. You catch Matthias clapping a little longer than he should. You sip your wine. It tastes better than it should. After dinner, there's music. Dancers spin in the square lanterns, catching in their hair like fireflies. A few people approach you, not many, just a few brave souls emboldened by drink. A farmer thanks you. Quietly. Says his sister's killer got what he deserved. A butcher offers you a jug of spiced mead. You decline. He leaves it anyway. And then oddly, a young girl walks up and presses a flower into your hand. A daisy, wilted at the edge. You looked lonely, she says, then runs off. You don't follow, but you don't drop the flower either. That night you sit on your porch, legs stretched out, watching the last of the lanterns sway in the breeze. For a moment you imagine a different life, one where you're a smith or a mason, a life where the only blade you touch is for carving wood. A life where you're welcome at tables, not just tolerated. You let the thought hang there like smoke. In the morning, the mood changes. A message arrives scrawled in haste. Come to the jail. Urgent. You find Otto pacing in front of the cells, face pale hands wringing a handkerchief into a knot. There's been an incident, he says. A prisoner killed a guard. Tried to escape. We need a sentence. Public. You ask when? Tonight. That's fast. Faster than usual. You sense panic behind the decision, a desire to re-establish control. You inspect the prisoner. He's older than most, 40, maybe more. Eyes like flint, no remorse. When you enter, he spits at your feet and laughs. They'll cheer when I go, he says. You nod once. They always do. You request the scaffold be cleaned, oiled, and inspected. The trapdoor's been sticking again, and the rope last used was frayed. Otto tries to rush you. You refuse. Clean deaths, or no deaths at all. That's the rule you've adopted. Maybe you're only one. By sunset, the square is packed. Word has spread. A man who killed a town guard, it draws a crowd the way fire draws moths. You wear the hood tonight. Not because you're hiding, because some nights need ritual, distance, clarity. You walk slowly, letting your steps echo against the stones. The crowd is loud, excited, drunk on spectacle. You scan the faces. Some cheer, some boo, some just watch. The prisoner snarls at the priest, refuses his last words. He stands straight, defiant. You check the knot. You feel the weight of the lever in your hand. The crowd falls silent. You pull. The drop is clean, no twitch. And then something strange. Applause. Not scattered, unified. A town exhaling its fear. You step down from the platform. You do not bow. You do not acknowledge. You walk through the parted sea of townsfolk who now look at you with something new in their eyes. Not just fear, not quite respect, but necessity. You are the line, the last word, the final gesture in a world that fears chaos. That night you sit with the daisy on the table beside your candle. It's wilted now, slumped, but still whole. Like you wake with ash in your throat. It's not from a fire. There's no smoke in the air, no distant blaze on the hills. Just that dry, bitter taste of something burned long ago and the memory of screams that may not have come from outside. Because today you won't kill anyone, but you will hurt them. You receive the order at dawn. A man convicted of repeated theft, third time this time from the church. The priest demanded a public punishment, visible penance as he called it. The council agrees. Branding, yes, but also something more, the stocks and the shame mask. You haven't used the shame mask before. The guards bring it wrapped in cloth like they're afraid to touch it with bare hands. When you unfold the linen, you find it staring back at you, cold iron shaped into a grotesque face with an exaggerated tongue, a hooked nose, and heavy eyelids that seem half asleep. It's meant to humiliate, not to hurt. But humiliation is a type of pain, too. You prepare everything yourself. You check the lock on the stock's wood, warped by years of rain iron hinges that squeal like dying birds. The mask's straps are cracked, but usable. The branding iron is set in the coals beside the forge, behind the jail, glowing brighter with every minute. At noon, the square fills. You don't recognize most of the faces. That makes it easier. The condemned is brought forward, wrists bound, feet bare. He looks more embarrassed than afraid. He keeps trying to meet your eyes, but you don't let him. You don't want to remember him later. You don't want to remember any of them, but especially not the ones who cry silently. You place him in the stocks. You fit the mask over his face. It latches with a metallic clink that echoes more than it should. Then the branding. A single letter T again. For thief. You press the hot iron to his shoulder, and the air fills with the stench of burning flesh and a sound that isn't quite a scream. Then the waiting. He'll stay there for 2 days, masked, mocked, his skin blistering beneath the sun. The townsfolk will throw rotten fruit. Children will point. Elders will turn away with the smug satisfaction of righteousness. And you'll go home and scrub your hands until the heat leaves your palms. Your father rarely spoke of this part of the job, not because it was more brutal than beheading, but because it was smaller, pettier. You can pretend a clean execution is noble, a mercy. But branding shame masks, this is slow degradation. A fringe practice, some scholars say. Others claim it was widespread, even ritualized. The records are inconsistent. Historians still argue whether these punishments were primarily about justice or about power, public obedience through cruelty. Either way, they leave scars, outside and in. That night, you sit in your hut, turning the shame mask over in your hands. It's heavy and slightly damp from sweat. You wonder how many faces it's touched. You wonder if they were all guilty. You wonder what guilty even means to the people who cheer when the iron hisses. You consider throwing it into the stream, but it's not your place. You're just the one who straps it on. The next morning, you return to the square. He's still there, still wearing the mask, still bleeding slightly from the brand, still silent. The children have lost interest. The crowd is thinner. You unlock the stocks. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't run. He just stands, shoulders slumped, and walks away into a part of town you never visit. You ask Otto if you're done for the week. He nods. Unless the priest catches another thief. You start walking home, but then Otto calls out behind you. There's something else. You stop. We've had a request from the bishopric. They want someone delivered to the mines. Shackled transport, public escort. That's not usually your duty. But Otto looks nervous. They want you to do it, as a message. You understand. This isn't about the man. It's about presence, theater, power. You accept. 2 days later, you ride alongside a cart carrying a man who once burned church records to conceal a land dispute. His punishment isn't death. It's worse exile to the mines. No sunlight, no return, a slow decay underground. You ride past the village down the long road that leads toward the hills. No one speaks. You leave him with the foreman. You hand over the papers. You ride back alone. On the way home, you pass the meadow again, the place of unmarked graves. You stop. You walk through the grass, careful not to disturb the stakes. But someone's been here. There's a small bundle at the base of one marker, a dried flower, and a tiny wooden carving. A face, tongue out, eyes drooping. The shame mask, but small, child-sized, carved, not forged. You pick it up, you turn it over, and on the back, scratched in careful lines, are 2 words, "Forgive me." You stand there until the wind picks up. Then you walk home slowly, feeling every step. You hang the carving above your door, not as a threat, as a reminder. Some masks are worn once, others never come off. You're summoned at dawn to the chapel. Not the one in town, but the smaller, older one near the fields, where the stone walls lean a little and moss creeps over the windows like it's trying to reclaim them. You haven't been there since your father's burial? And even then you waited until after the priest left. The bell doesn't ring for you. It never does. But when you arrive, the door's already open. Inside, Father Elric stands beside the altar, hands clasped, robes dusty from disuse. His eyes are sharp, sharper than his sermons at least. He doesn't greet you right away, just gestures toward the bench. You sit. There's been some concern, he says, voice slow, as if carefully measuring each syllable. About souls, about yours. You wait. He continues. You've carried out over a dozen executions in just under a year. You've branded whipped, delivered men to exile. Efficiently, cleanly. But the pause hangs heavy. Without the sacrament. You blink once, slowly. You haven't been to confession, he says, leaning forward. Not once. And you have touched death's son. You're not his son. You're not anyone's anymore. But you let it pass. I don't absolve actions, he adds, only burdens, and you're carrying more than most. You don't argue. You just ask, do the condemned confess? He nods. Almost always. Do they receive absolution if they ask? And do you believe it works? You ask, genuinely curious. That words make their souls lighter. Father Elric hesitates. It's not about weight, it's about grace. You rise without speaking, walk slowly to the door. He doesn't stop you. Outside, the air feels clearer. The chapel smells of old incense and fear. The wind off the field smells like wet hay and frost. That afternoon, you accompany a prisoner to the gallows. A young man, barely 18, accused of murdering a merchant during a drunken brawl. The proof is shaky, but the merchant was wealthy. The boy was not. The mayor tells you quietly, best to keep the peace. His kind can't afford the chaos. You almost flinch. Almost. Before the execution, the priest arrives. Father Elric robes brighter now, as if the gods themselves might be watching. He kneels beside the boy, whispers, offers the last rites. The boy listens, then turns to you and asks, will it hurt? You shake your head. Not if you're still. He nods, and for once, someone climbs the scaffold with steady legs. The trapdoor opens, the rope does its job, and the boy hangs without struggle. The priest makes the sign of the cross. The crowd disperses quietly. No cheers, no jeers. Just silence. Back at your hut, you sit beside the fire, polishing the blade you didn't use today. Sometimes you prepare all the tools, even when you know which one you'll need. It's a habit your father had. Like preparing for every ending, even if only one will arrive. You find yourself thinking about absolution. You've never asked for it, never expected it. But sometimes in the deep hours of the night, you wonder if the job itself counts as penance. If carrying out the punishment with care, with precision, with a kind of reluctant mercy that might be its own prayer. There's a knock. It's Matthias. He's holding a book, a small one, worn leather binding. Found this in the records room, he says. Executioner's journal, from 2 generations ago. You take it. The writing inside is tight slanted. A man named Herman. He served 40 years. The entries are brief, cold. Then one passage near the middle. The priest says I must speak my sins to be saved. But I know every name, every face. They live behind my eyes. That's my confession. You close the book. You understand. That night a storm rolls in. Thunder shudders through the beams of your roof. Rain lashes the shutters. You lie awake watching the flicker of lightning through the cracks in the walls. And then another knock. You open the door to find the widow of the merchant's victim, the boy's execution. Her eyes are red but dry. She doesn't speak. She just hands you a pouch. Not heavy, not coin. You open it later. Inside is a folded scrap of cloth, the boy's, and a note he didn't scream. Thank you. You hold the cloth to your face and breathe in dust and linen. You don't cry, but your hands shake. In the morning, Father Elric leaves a message at your door. Just 4 words. Grace is not silence. You burn the note, not out of anger, out of hope he's wrong. Because if he's right, then silence is all you have. You dream of the scaffold. Not the real one, not the crooked wooden structure that creaks in the wind and stains your boots with old blood. No, this one is larger, endless. Like a stage stretching into blackness lit only by a single flickering torch. And on it, everyone you've executed. They're seated, not standing, lined up like an audience, silent, not bleeding, not twitching, just watching. At the center is your father. He doesn't speak. He just points to your hands. You wake before dawn, palms cold, the fire burned low. Outside, nothing growls softly. You rise, pull on your cloak, and open the door to silence. The stars are still out. The moon hangs low, dull and wide. The village hasn't stirred yet. You take a walk. The stream gurgles lazily beside the path. You find yourself wandering toward the meadow, the one with the stakes, the one you haven't visited in days. There are new offerings, a wreath of dried herbs, a pair of worn shoes, a folded piece of parchment with a drawing, just a stick figure, arms outstretched, X's for eyes. A child's hand, likely. They're remembering the dead now. You're dead. You wonder what that means for you. As the sun rises, you're met by a messenger. Another noble, another duel gone wrong, another private execution. Sword again. It's becoming a pattern. You make your way to the appointed courtyard. This time it's different. There are no servants, no audience, just the condemned and the magistrate. The man is kneeling, already blindfolded. You recognize his voice. He's one of the lords who sat in judgment during a trial months ago. You remember his jeweled rings, the way he leaned back as though justice was a meal he'd already eaten. And now here he is, stripped of his title, stripped of his silks. You don't have to speak, he says. Just do it. You oblige. The blade whispers through flesh and air. One motion. Clean. The magistrate nods once. Thank you for your discretion. You clean the blade with the cloth they provide, white linen that turns red at once, and leave through the back gate. That night you don't go home. You walk the outskirts of the village until your legs ache. You think about how many noblemen have died beneath your hands, and how many peasants, and how different the two never looked once the blood began to pool. You stop by Matthias's quarters. He's in the yard working on a post, measuring rope lengths with a carpenter's eye. You've been busy, you say. He shrugs. Thought we needed a second scaffold. You raise an eyebrow. Not for more executions, he adds. For practice, in case I ever have to. The idea of anyone else doing this work makes your skin crawl. Not because you're protective, because you wouldn't wish it on anyone. Not even someone who asked for it. But you don't say that. You help him lift the beam into place. By moonlight, it almost looks like gallows. In the morning, you receive a message that unsettles you more than any sentence so far. A request. From a foreign dignitary visiting the region. He wants to observe you. Not a particular execution, you. They're studying judicial methods, Otto explains nervously. He's writing a report for the crown. Wants to understand regional deathcraft. His words, not mine. You grit your teeth. They want to turn you into an exhibit. Otto senses your hesitation. It's political, he adds. We don't say no. So you prepare. You clean every tool twice. You line them up in neat rows, labeled and oiled. You draw up your notes on drop lengths and axe angles. You feel for the first time in your life like a lecturer preparing for class. The dignitary arrives late. He's young, impossibly so. Barely older than Matthias, dressed in deep green with gloves that have never touched ash. He observes in silence, hands folded behind his back, walking slow circles around the scaffold like he's admiring a painting. He doesn't ask about death. He asks about technique. How do you know the swing will land clean? What muscle group powers the stroke? Do you feel resistance when the blade connects? You answer at first. Briefly, then not at all. Eventually, you leave him with Otto and walk away. You're not a curiosity. You're not an art form. You're a man doing what no one else will. And if they don't understand, that they never will. That night, you visit the chapel again. Not for confession, just to sit. Father Elric isn't there. The room is empty, cold, still smelling faintly of candles and old paper. You sit on the back bench. You don't pray. You just close your eyes and listen. The creak of wood, the wind through stone, your own breath. And for a moment it sounds like forgiveness. But then the wind stops, and you remember forgiveness is not your profession, just the absence of punishment. And you are the embodiment of punishment. Whether you asked to be or not, rain again. It comes hard and sideways, thundering against your shutters like fists turning the road into mud and the stream into a thick ribbon of brown. Nothing lies under the table, his paws twitching with dreams, and for once you let him stay inside without protest. Even death deserves warmth sometimes. You don't expect the knock. Not this early, not in this weather, but it comes sharp, urgent. You open the door to find a woman soaked to the bone hood, half-fallen face, pale but determined. She's not a villager. Too clean, too direct. "I'm from Kettenberg," she says. "My brother's to be executed. Tomorrow. He asked for you." You stare at her. "I was told you were thorough, that you don't make people suffer." You've heard that before. A compliment, a curse. Kettenberg is 2 days east. A market town with its own executioner, but perhaps not one with steady hands. "Please," she says. He's scared and guilty, but he wants it done right. You don't know what that means anymore, right? But you agree. You pack your tools in silence. The axe, the sword, the hood. Matthias watches as you tie the bundle. "You want company?" he asks. You consider it. Then shake your head. The road is long, mud up to the ankles, trees dripping water like slow applause. You arrive at dusk the next day, clothes, heavy thoughts, heavier. The jail is small, square, and smells of mildew and regret. The jailer is a squat man with eyes that never leave your blade. The prisoner, her brother, is already awake. He's calm. Too calm. "You're the one from Durnheim," he says. "The one with the clean record." You raise an eyebrow. "I read," he adds with a shrug. "Old law journals. They keep records of executions. Yours are always efficient." You say nothing. He continues. "I killed 2 men, robbed 4. I don't want absolution. Just no spectacle." You nod. You inspect the town's gallows. It's falling apart. The drop is too shallow, the lever rusted. You could rebuild it, but it would take hours, and you don't trust the wood in this rain. Instead, you ask for a block and a quiet space. They give you the back garden of the jail, shielded by stone walls with wet ivy curling up the edges. You sharpen your blade under a thatched awning. The prisoner sits inside drinking something warm. You don't ask what. You don't ask much at all. In the morning, there's no crowd. Just the sister, the priest, and 2 guards. The condemned kneels without prompting. He closes his eyes. No last words. You swing. The head falls. No twitch. His sister bows her head. You clean the blade, tie your tools, and leave before the tea cools. The road back is worse. Rain has churned the paths into rivers. Your boots stick. Your hands sting. At one point, your cart slips in the mud, and you have to cut the harness from the mule to stop it from breaking a leg. You walk the rest of the way. When you reach home, Matthias is waiting. "There's been a death," he says. "Not the kind you cause." You look up. It's Otto. You blink. "Heart-stopped," Matthias adds, in his sleep. You sit down on the edge of the fire pit and pull off your boots. Otto wasn't your friend, but he was your tether. He brought the orders, managed the complaints, sat between you and the mob with his soft voice and sweaty hands. Now the line is gone. For 2 days, no one comes, no knocks, no messages, just silence and drizzle. Then a letter arrives, sealed with black wax, from the regional council. You read it twice, They want you to assume Otto's role and keep your current duties, enforcement and execution, oversight and delivery. 2 hats, 1 blade. You stare at the page until the ink blurs. Matthias says, "That's power." You say, "That's risk." You both know what it really is: consolidation. There's a phrase you remember your father saying once: "A man who swings the axe should never give the order." That's how tyrants are made. But then again, your father also said, "Never let someone with clean hands write about death. You burn the letter. And then you write your own reply. A refusal, a short one. Then you hang your hood outside your door for the first time. Let the villagers see it. Let them remember what you do and what you won't do." That evening, someone leaves a bundle of sage on your porch. Not a bribe, a blessing. You toss it in the fire and let the smoke carry your name and your answer. A dry wind blows through town. It's the kind that kicks up old ash from the corners of hearths and leaves your eyes stinging with the memory of fires long dead. Summer's receding fast, and with it the rhythm of crops and festivals. What's left behind is the season of reckoning, when debts are tallied, disputes are settled, and old wounds are reopened like rotten floorboards. That's how you end up standing in the jail courtyard again, sharpening a blade by lantern light, preparing for a sentence that's not quite death, but close. The prisoner this time is a woman, mid-30s, accused of falsifying documents and stealing from the town granary. Food meant for widows and children. She doesn't deny it. In fact, she seems almost proud. It went to people who needed it. She says, "Chin up," not people who signed the paperwork first. The mayor's response was swift. She's to be publicly flogged 30 lashes, followed by permanent exile. You inspect the whip before dawn. This one is new leather, still stiff knots, spaced like punctuation marks. It's been specially weighted with iron beads. To make an impression, the constable joked. You didn't laugh. By mid-morning, the crowd has gathered. They always do for a flogging. It's blood without finality, pain without death. A performance people can walk away from feeling superior. It reminds them what happens to those who cross the line without the guilt of watching the line erase someone entirely. You bind her hands to the post. She doesn't resist. You give her one chance to speak. She says, "I'd do it again." So you begin. The first lash cracks like firewood splitting. The second draws blood. By the 5th, she's biting her lip hard enough to bleed. By the 10th, her knees buckle. You pace the lashes, spacing them across the back and shoulders just as your father taught you. Pain is not the point. Message is. At 23, she passes out. You stop. Douse her with a bucket of water. She comes to. Barely. You finish all 30. Then you cut the ropes. She slumps to the ground, but manages to speak through blood and grit. Still worth it. You believe her. As she's carried away to the town edge and told never to return, you look at the faces in the crowd. They're not angry, not horrified. They look satisfied, like something in them was fed. You go home that night and hang the whip back on the wall. It's darker now, stained with a memory. You don't clean it. Not yet. Instead, you light a candle and pull out your father's journal. There's an entry that catches your eye. Some think the wheel is cruel, but the lash is worse. The wheel ends a man. The lash leaves him to decay in public. You close the book and stare at the wall for a long time. A knock. Matthias. He's holding something wrapped in burlap. You open it. A skeleton's hand. Not real wooden, carved, with joints that move and fingers that curl. I found it in the archives, he says. Old teaching tool, symbol of justice, or maybe mortality. The record didn't say. You hold it up to the light. It casts a shadow like a reaching branch. You place it on the mantle, a reminder. Later that week, something unusual happens. A scholar arrives, from the city. Not a priest, not a noble. A woman with ink-stained fingers and scrolls under one arm. Her name is Lisette. She introduces herself with confidence, and then does something no one else has done in months. She shakes your hand. I'm writing a manuscript, she says, on methods of justice. I've read the provincial logs. Your name comes up a lot. You wait. She smiles. I'd like to watch, if you don't mind. You do mind, but you nod anyway. Lisette follows you for 2 days. She sketches your tools, asks about angles, wrist position, audience response. She wants to know about weight, not of the axe, but of the moment after. She asks if you dream of the condemned. You say no. She doesn't believe you. On the 3rd day, she sits with you beside the stream. Nothing sleeps at your feet. Do you think you'll be remembered? She asks casually. You toss a pebble into the water. No. She tilts her head. But people will write about you. Then they'll lie. She scribbles something. Would you want your own chapter? You laugh low and tired, only if it's short. She grins. Fair. Before she leaves, she gifts you a small item, a pressed flower sealed in wax. For memory, she says. You place it on the same shelf as the wooden hand, next to the folded cloth from the boy's sister. Your mantle grows heavier with quiet offerings. Tokens not of forgiveness, but of witness. The next morning, a child knocks at your door. He hands you a small pouch. No note. Inside a piece of bone. Human. Worn smooth from handling. You don't ask. You simply place it beside the rest. The first frost arrives overnight. You wake to a world covered in brittle silver, as if someone dipped the grass and rooftops in crushed glass. Your breath fogs the air the moment you sit up, and your joints protest like rusted hinges. You roll your shoulders, stretch your neck, and rise slowly. The axe feels heavier in cold weather. Metal always does. Your gloves don't help much, lined with wool, yes, but the cold seeps in whispering reminders of every swing you've made. Winter is when justice stiffens, when the ropes freeze solid, and the gallows groan beneath layers of ice and guilt. Today isn't for killing. Today is for cleaning. There's a crew gathering by the square. Carpenters, blacksmiths, and 2 laborers carrying barrels of tar and brushes. The scaffold is being reinforced before the deep freeze. Matthias is already there, sleeves rolled up, hammer in hand, hair dusted with frost. He waves you over with a grin that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You ever fix the thing you work on most? He asks. You grunt. Only if I want it to outlive me. You join him. The nails bite, the boards creak. You tar the base, rewrap, the ropes reinforce the trap-door lever. The gallows is a machine like any other. It needs attention, or it starts making its own decisions. The townsfolk pass by without speaking, but more than a few stop to watch. Some bring warm cider. No one offers it to you directly, but they set it nearby on a bench and walk away. It's progress in its way. As you work, you catch Matthias staring at something in the distance. You follow his gaze. It's the mayor, talking with a group of armed men, strangers judging by their cloaks. One of them wears a red sash over his armor. Another carries a long staff with iron rings. Mercenaries' envoys you approach slowly. The mayor turns. "Oh, you," he says. "Good. We'll need you ready tomorrow." "Sunrise, for rebellion," he says like he's ordering firewood. The strangers nod at you. One tips his chin, but says nothing. You wait. Finally, the mayor adds, a group of dissenters was caught trying to sabotage the grain stores. 2 are to hang. 1, for public torture. You hold his gaze. On what proof, he frowns. Confession. After interrogation. You don't ask how they got it. You've seen what they call confession when fear does the talking. That night, you go home and take down your father's diagrams, the ones for the wheel, the frame, the rack. You spread them across the table, each ink mark like a quiet scream. You study them for hours, trying to decide which part of this makes you feel worse, that you might be used to torture a man, or that you know how. Historians still argue whether executioners were legally required to perform torture or merely encouraged by civic expectation. The records blur the lines between punishment and performance law and theater. What they forget is the man holding the tool. In the end, you sleep in your chair. You dream of a man without a face. In the morning, frost clings to your boots before you even step outside. The square is already filling, news has spread. Spectacle draws people faster than famine. The prisoners are brought forward. 2 young men, barely more than boys. One weeps, the other is silent. The third, older, limps as he walks, bruised, shackled, stripped to the waist. You glance at Matthias. He looks pale. The hangings are first. You measure the rope carefully. Wait. Drop. Resistance. You speak softly to each of the boys. They thank you. You drop the first, then the second. No twitches, no cries. Then comes the third. You light the coals yourself. Heat the tongs. The mayor announces the crimes in a loud voice. The word traitor cuts through the cold like a blade. The crowd leans forward. They want to see pain. They expect theater. You press the iron to his shoulder. The hiss is long. His scream is longer. You stop after one brand. You turn to the mayor. That was the sentence. The mayor frowns. We asked for 3. You look at the prisoner. His eyes are open, still human. You say he's conscious. He'll remember it. Then you leave the brand on the ground and walk away. The crowd murmurs. A few cheer. One throws a stone. It misses. Back at your hut, you sit beside the fire. You place the brand into the coals. You watch it glow, then melt. You sleep with your boots on. Matthias knocks at dawn. He doesn't say anything. He just hands you a note. It reads, "Some of us are watching. Thank you." Signed only with an X. You pin it beside the wooden hand and the flower. You stare at the fire and wonder if the man you burned will one day dream of you, or if he'll remember you kindly for stopping after one. You don't light a fire the next night. Not because it's warm, your breath still ghosts the air inside the house, but because you don't want the light. Not tonight. Instead, you sit in the dark, sharpening a blade by touch alone. You've done it enough times that your hands remember the angles, even when your eyes are closed. There's something strange in the quiet now. Not peace, not guilt. Just the echo of something that hasn't happened yet. The next morning, the mayor's replacement arrives. Yes, replacement. Turns out the old mayor fell ill, quickly, perhaps too quickly. Some say it was food poisoning. Others whisper about a rival's hand. No one confirms anything. The new man is younger, harsher, wears his sash too tight and talks too fast. He visits your hut unannounced. No warning, no knock. Just opens the door and steps inside like he owns the floorboards. You're to increase visibility, he says. Too many acts done behind walls. We need the people to see justice, to feel it. You say nothing. He walks around your tools like he's shopping. You'll deliver a man to public stocks today, he continues, and read the sentence aloud. That's new. You've never spoken during a punishment. He adds, there will be a scribe present. We'll need it recorded for the city archive. You stare at him until he finally leaves. Matthias leans in from the window. Was that a threat or a promotion? You sigh. Both. You escort the prisoner to the stocks just after midday. A man who sold diseased meat to the barracks. He doesn't resist, doesn't speak, just stands while you lock him in. You turn to the crowd. You hold the scroll. You read the sentence. Your voice sounds strange, too loud, too measured, like it belongs to someone else. For knowingly distributing spoiled goods during wartime, this man shall be bound in the public square for 3 days. He shall wear the mark of his crime and bear the witness of the people. You step back. You almost expect applause. Instead, a child throws an egg. It hits the prisoner. Then another. Then bread. Then a stone. You step forward too late. The man's head is bleeding. You shout, enough. They freeze. You kneel beside the prisoner, loosen the latch. He's still breathing. Barely. Matthias is already moving. He calls for the guard. They carry him off. You follow. The new mayor meets you halfway. He's frowning. What was that? You answer, a crowd turning. He scowls. Crowds must turn. That's the point. You meet his eyes. I'm not your actor. He leans in. You're whatever keeps this town quiet. You walk away. The next morning, someone has painted something on your door. A single red line, across the wood, like a cut. Nothing growls at it for a full hour before settling down. That afternoon, Lisette returns. The scholar. She looks tired. They're rewriting the records already, she says. Your name's in the reports, but it's shifting. You're becoming a character. A figure. Not a man. You pour her tea. She adds, the new mayor wants to centralize punishment. Bigger gallows, louder events, permanent scaffolding, traveling justice. You raise an eyebrow. Traveling, she nods. He wants you to go town to town, as a symbol. You stare at the wall. Lisette continues. Do you want me to write you as you are, or as they do? You answer without looking at her. As I am, while I still am. That night, Matthias shows you something behind the hut. A box. Inside the old tools your father used. He's been restoring them, quietly, polishing, repairing, preserving. I thought you might want to pass them down, he says. You ask to who he shrugs. Someone. Someday. Not now. You sit beside the box, lift the old axe, it's lighter than yours. The edge dull, but there's something in it. A weight that isn't steel. Matthias adds, they're going to ask you to do something soon. Something you won't want to. You know he's right. Because the next day, the mayor calls on you again. A woman accused of blasphemy, witchcraft, no trial. Just an accusation from a merchant's wife. Her child fell ill. No other reason needed. They want a public burning. You say there hasn't been a burning in 20 years? He replies, traditions return. You ask, is there evidence? He shrugs. There's fear. That's enough. You refuse. The next day you find ash scattered across your doorstep. Not from your hearth, from hers. She was burned at night. Without you. By the crowd. Matthias helps you sweep the ash away. Neither of you speak. At dusk you go to the chapel. Not for confession. Just to listen again. There's no choir, only echoes. You sit at the back. One word surfaces in your mind. Resign. But you know the truth. You can't leave. Because if you do, someone worse will take your place. And the fires will come more often. The snow falls for the first time in months. Not the light powdered dust of early winter, but thick flakes that land heavy and stay blanketing rooftops, muting footsteps, weighing down the world. You step outside, and the silence is immediate, vast, like the sky itself has paused to breathe. It's a silence you welcome. There's no one waiting outside your hut today. No guards with scrolls, no messengers bearing orders, no mothers with trembling hands. For once, the gallows sits untouched, buried in white. A monument no one visits, a reminder no one wants right now. You take the axe down anyway. Old habits. Matthias arrives an hour later, wrapped in fur, his nose red from the cold. Still no word, he asks, shaking snow from his shoulders. You shake your head. Strange, he says, then adds, good though. Isn't it you want to say yes? You want to say that a quiet scaffold means a quiet town. But deep down you know better. Silence can mean peace, or it can mean secrets. The mayor hasn't been seen in days. Some say he's sick, others say he left town. Rumors fill the gaps like smoke in an old chimney. You don't chase them. Smoke always finds its way out eventually. That afternoon, you walk the meadow path to the unmarked graves. Someone's been here again. New markers, small wooden. 3 of them freshly carved, initials etched into the top. No dates, no names. Just 3 silent declarations of a truth no one wants to speak aloud. You kneel. The snow crunches beneath your knees. Someone cared enough to remember. Someone other than you. That evening, Lisette returns once more. Her cheeks are wind-chapped, her hair dusted with snow, but her eyes are sharp as ever. She sits beside your fire without asking, her notebook already open. They're rewriting everything she says. The Capitol wants a unified record, a cleaner version. Your name, it'll stay, but your methods, your refusals, your choices, those are being removed. You nod. You expected this. They're painting you as obedient, she says almost apologetically. Precise, quiet, but complicit. You look into the flames. That's not wrong. It's not the whole truth either. She pulls something from her bag, a bundle of parchment tied in twine. My version, she says. Unpublished, but real. Your voice. You don't take it. Not yet. Instead, you ask, why bother? She smiles, because someday someone will wonder what justice looked like, and they'll need to know it had a face. You let the bundle sit on the table, untouched. That night, as snow continues to fall, there's another knock. A woman older, hunched beneath layers of wool, eyes bright beneath a fur-lined hood. She doesn't introduce herself, just steps inside and sets a box down. Inside, bones. Small ones. Not human. Animal, dog. Likely nothing. You feel your breath stop. He was on the road, she says quietly. Frozen. Curled up near the edge of the forest. Thought you'd want him home. You kneel beside the box. She leaves without waiting for thanks. Matthias helps you dig the grave the next morning. Beneath the tall pine by the stream, you wrap the bones in your old cloak. The one you wore before you took up the axe. You bury him deep. You carve his name into the bark with your father's dagger. Just one word. Nothing. You stand in silence for a long time after. And when you finally return to your hut, you don't light the fire. You unwrap Lisette's bundle. You read every word, every sentence. And for the first time in a long time, you see yourself not as a hand or a blade or a tool, but as a man. A man who made choices. A man who will be remembered, or not, but who existed fully, painfully, completely. That night you sit at your table, parchment before you, ink and quill in hand, and you begin to write. Not orders, not names, but stories. Yours, theirs, ours. Your handwriting starts shaky. It's been years since you wrote more than a signature, or the occasional weight or drop calculation in the back of the ledger. But your hand remembers eventually. The lines steady. The letters straighten. Your voice begins to sharpen, not your speaking voice, but the one that lives in ink. You begin with names, just the first ones, not all. You don't remember all, but you remember enough. You write down the boy who didn't flinch, the woman who said she'd steal again, the man who thanked you before the blade fell, the noble who asked for silence, the baker's wife who stared at you as you locked her husband in the stocks, the soldier who whispered a song while you tied the rope. They return to you one by one, and you don't judge them. You simply record them. At some point, Matthias enters quietly. He places bread and water on the table, sees what you're doing, and nods without speaking. Then he leaves. You write for hours. The snow continues outside, steady as breath. You reach a point where the faces start to blur. That's when you stop. You set down the quill, stretch your fingers, and feel the ache deep in the bones of your wrist. There's a knock at dusk, but it's not the usual kind. Not official, not sharp. It's hesitant. You open the door to a young woman in a cloak, too thin for the weather. Her eyes dart around, but she doesn't step back when you meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," she says quickly. "I shouldn't be here. But my brother, he died last year. Here, with you. You don't speak. Just wait." She continues. "He was guilty, I know that. But he wrote me before. Said you were kind. Said you looked at him like he was still human." She wipes at her nose with her sleeve. "I didn't know where else to go. I just needed to see where he was last seen, where he ended." You step aside. She enters slowly, like she's crossing a sacred threshold. You don't offer tea. She doesn't ask. She just looks around, at the tools, at the mantle, at the wooden hand, at the pressed flower, at the axe. Her eyes linger on it. Then without a word, she walks to the hearth and kneels. She pulls a small bag from her coat, opens it, inside a folded scrap of red cloth. "He carried this as a boy," she says. "Thought it made him brave." She places it gently on the mantle, beside all the other things. You let her sit for a while. When she finally stands to leave, she says, "I don't forgive what he did, but I think he died with less pain than he lived with." You nod, and she's gone. That night you dream of your father again, but not at the scaffold. He's in the forest, gathering firewood. You're a child again, following behind him, with a bundle of twigs too big for your arms. He looks back, not with disappointment, not with weight, but with something close to warmth. He says, "You don't carry it forever. You just carry it long enough." You wake with tears already on your face. You don't wipe them away. The next day, the new mayor sends word, an execution, high profile, traveling observers, a child murderer, proof indisputable, eyewitnesses, confession. But the mayor wants the hanging delayed, turned into a spectacle. 3 days of display, the order reads. Guilt deserves an audience. You burn the message. Then you write back a reply. One sentence. Guilt does not feed the rope gravity does. You send Matthias to deliver it. When he returns, he's breathless from running. They're furious, he says. They said if you don't comply, they'll send another. You shrug. Let them. 2 days pass. No one comes. No replacement arrives. No punishment follows. And when the day of the execution comes, they relent. The man is brought quietly. No crowd. No priest. Just you, Matthias, and a witness from the city who says nothing, just records what he sees. The hanging is clean. No twitch, no delay, no speech. After the city man approaches, he says, "I've seen this done in 10 places. You're the only one who doesn't perform." You nod once. He adds, "Good," then walks away. You return home. You set down your gloves. You open your journal. And for the first time, you write not a name, but a sentence. One you've never allowed yourself until now. I am still a man. Spring returns without ceremony. The snow melts into the earth, soaking the roads until they glisten like wet parchment. Buds appear on the tree near Nothing's grave, and the birds return in 2s and 3s, warbling uncertain melodies, as if testing their voices after months of silence. You're still here, and for once, so is the quiet. There have been no executions for over 2 weeks. No floggings, no public sentences, no anonymous letters nailed to your door at dawn. Even the mayor has grown quieter, his presence reduced to council meetings and the occasional closed-door muttering with merchants. Rumor has it he was scolded by someone higher. Maybe the crown, maybe the church. Maybe it was the people. Hard to say which has sharper teeth these days. You fill your time with small repairs. The roof needed patching. The hinges on the shed were rusted. The blade of your axe, though clean, had developed a faint nick near the edge. You file it smooth while listening to the wind tap against the shutters. One morning, a small boy arrives. You don't recognize him. Thin arms, oversized coat, breathless from running. He stares at you with wide eyes and says, "They're fighting in the woods." "My papa says men with banners are coming." You crouch. "What kind of banners?" He shrugs. "Black ones, with wolves. Not from here." You give him a crust of bread and tell him to stay inside next time. Then you pack your tools, not for punishment, for readiness. Because when armies move, they don't ask for justice. They take it, twist it, and then leave someone like you behind to sweep up the bones. Matthias confirms the rumor that night. "Mercenary band," he says. "Passed through the next town over. No pillaging. Yet. You both know it won't last. You draft a letter to the regional guard. You sign it with your full name, not your title, not the town's mark. Just your name. You ask what to do if the laws change under pressure. If a mayor turns coward. If justice becomes a coin instead of a scale. You receive no reply. But the next day a man appears at your door. He's not from here. That much is obvious. Fine boots, iron buckle, no mud on his hem despite the slush. He carries no weapon, but his hands look like they remember the weight of one. He introduces himself simply, Jasper, then adds, "I'm here to observe." You say nothing. He smiles. "I've heard of you. Clean hands, steady blade, quiet, rare combination." You ask, "What are you watching for?" He shrugs. Consistency, loyalty, the line between fear and principle. He stays for 3 days, follows you, watches your routines, speaks to no one but you and Matthias. Then, on the 4th morning, he asks a single question. "If the law turned tomorrow, if they told you to hang a child for stealing bread, would you?" You answer without pause. "No." He nods. "Then you'll be left alone." And he leaves. Just like that. You tell no one. Later that week, Lisette returns one final time. She brings a leather-bound copy of her manuscript. She places it in your hands like a child. "It's done," she says. "Only one copy. Yours." You open it. The title page reads, "The Weight of the Blade. The Life and Silence of a Medieval Executioner." You don't recognize yourself in the first few pages. But slowly as you read, the voice feels familiar. Not just accurate. True. She leaves without ceremony. You place the book on the mantel beside the flower, the wooden hand, the red cloth, and the bone. It fits. That evening, Matthias arrives with a request. "I'd like to try," he says, holding the old axe your father once carried. You hesitate, then you nod. You set up a straw dummy in the clearing beyond the meadow. He swings, misses, swings again, hits too high. Third time clean. He breathes hard, sweating even in the cold. You say, "Now imagine it," breathing, crying, praying. He lowers the axe, sits down hard on a log. You sit beside him. Neither of you speaks. The trees do, though. Their leaves are waking. Their branches stretch. And beneath you, the earth stirs with roots and old names. When you return to your hut, you write a new entry in your own journal. Just one line. When the blade is steady, the heart must tremble. You set the quill down. You pour a drink. And for once, you sleep without dreaming. A letter arrives sealed in green wax, a color reserved for only one kind of message royal observers. You break the seal slowly, the way you might unwrap a blade, not knowing which edge will cut. The contents are brief. Your presence is requested at the capital. For review, for consultation, for observation. You reread it 3 times. There's no signature, no crest, just the seal and the words. A summons, not a request. Matthias notices your silence. You don't answer immediately. The last time someone came from the capital, they brought orders soaked in blood and parchment as thin as loyalty. But something tells you this is different. So you pack. You leave behind the heavy axe. You carry the sword instead. It's cleaner, lighter, less obvious. You wrap it in linen and strap it beneath your cloak. You bring only one set of clothes. No tools, no journal, just the weight of what you know. The ride takes 5 days. On the road, you pass other villages, some with gallows, some without. In one, the scaffold has rotted through the rope, still dangling from a beam snapped in half by storm or perhaps regret. In another, there's no scaffold at all, just stories whispered through shutters. The capital is nothing like your village. Streets paved in stone, doors with glass windows, guards with polished armor who don't know what blood smells like when it dries on wool. You're given a room at an inn near the courthouse, too clean, too soft. You sleep on the floor instead. The next day, they bring you to a chamber with vaulted ceilings and tapestries that try too hard to impress. Seated around a crescent table are 8 people, men and women in silks and brocade, scholars and advisors, and something else behind their eyes. Calculation. At the center, Jasper. He nods. Thank you for coming. No one introduces themselves. You're asked questions. Many. What do you use to sharpen your blade? Do you pray before executions? Do you believe in sin? You answer as best you can. Then the questions turn. Have you ever denied an order? Yes. How many? 5. That you admit to. Do you believe the people still fear justice? You answer. They fear spectacle more. Do they respect you? You say enough not to lie when they're dying. That gets a reaction. One woman writes it down verbatim. Another asks, if we standardized punishment across the kingdom, would you accept a lesser man giving the same orders you now refuse? You say nothing. Jasper cuts in. This man doesn't need a title to act with restraint. That's why he's here. The room quiets. They dismiss you after that. No verdict. No instruction. Just a nod and a closed door. You return to your room. The sword stays sheathed. At dawn, another letter arrives. Not green this time, white sealed with wax the color of bone. Inside a single sentence. Return to your post. You're needed where you are. And below that smaller, no one else would do it better. You leave that morning. The return journey is slower. Spring has softened the roads. Travelers nod politely. You're not recognized. That's always been your power, being feared in one place, invisible in all others. When you return home, the town hasn't changed much, except for the tree by nothing's grave. It's blooming, full wild blossoms like tiny fists raised to the sky. You stand beneath it longer than you mean to. Matthias meets you halfway to the hut. "Welcome back," he says, but his tone is different, lighter. You ask what happened while I was gone. He scratches his beard. "Only one sentencing. I handled it." You raise your brow. "Public stocks, fraud. I didn't use the whip." You nod slowly. He adds, "I figured there was a better way," then hands you a folded paper. It's a drawing, crude, childish, but it shows a figure under a tree, and another placing a flower at their feet. The caption scrawled beneath in a child's hand. He made it quick. You don't know whose hand drew it, but you place it on the mantel beside the others. That night, you sit by the fire. You open your journal. You write a new entry. "The capital knows my name, but only this town knows my silence." Then you put down the pen and stare into the flames, not for warmth, for memory. The rain comes again, this time warm. Spring rain, not winter's cold spit or summer's choking downpour. It soaks the earth and feeds the roots beneath nothing's grave, washes the dust from the windows you never open, and runs in thin silver lines down the gallows post like old tears. You don't have an execution scheduled today, but you go to the scaffold anyway. You oil the hinges, sand the rough spot where the lever caught last time, replace 2 nails. There's something sacred in maintenance, something your father always insisted on. "A blade does no mercy dull," he said once, "but mercy can keep the blade clean." You don't know if he believed that, but you do. Matthias joins you after midday. He brings salted meat and pickled carrots wrapped in paper. You eat in the rain beneath the scaffold boots planted in mudbacks pressed against the steps. He says, "You know, it's been a month since anyone asked for blood." You nod. He continues, "People still break laws, but now they come to the hall instead of hiding. They bring witnesses, they argue, some even apologize." You sip water from your flask. "Something's shifted," he adds. "Maybe because of you," you say, "or because they're afraid of what comes after me." He laughs softly. "They should be." You don't disagree. Later that afternoon, you're summoned, not by the mayor, by the people. The council holds a public forum once a season, usually in the grain barn when it rains. Today it's packed. Farmers, tradesmen, even children peeking in through the gaps in the wood. And you, standing at the side. One woman rises. Her shawl is damp, but her voice is steady. "I lost my husband to the rope 2 years ago," she says. "He was guilty. He confessed. But he died with dignity. Because you were there." You tense. She looks straight at you. "I want to say thank you. And I want us to stop pretending that justice just happens. Someone delivers it. And it's not perfect. But we've had worse." There's silence. Then another voice. A man near the door. "My cousin was branded by the last executioner for stealing a chicken. He limped the rest of his life. Yours gave him a mark he could live with." You almost laugh. Then a third, then a fourth. No one claps. This isn't applause. It's memory. You nod once, then step outside. The rain has slowed. You walk to the chapel not to sit, but to leave something behind. You take your father's dagger and carve a small mark in the doorframe. An X. Not for error, for presence. You return home to find a parcel waiting, wrapped in wool, tied with twine. Inside a new hood, black lined with soft leather. No name, no note. Just a replacement. You stare at it for a long time before placing it on the hook beside the old one. You may not need it again for a while, but it's there, like a sealed door. That night you light every candle in the hut. All 6. A strange extravagance. You sit beside the mantel and read Lisette's manuscript again slowly, like tasting wine you can finally afford to enjoy. There's one line that stands out this time. The executioner is the last one to leave the room of history. He holds the lock and the memory. You close the book and remember a boy from years ago. Maybe your 3rd execution. He had freckles, shaking hands. And just before the swing, he whispered, "Please, tell my mother I sang." You never did, because you didn't know her name. But now you write it down, in your own ledger. He sang, not because anyone asked you to, but because no one else would. In the morning, you rise early. You walk to the stream. The tree near Nothing's grave has bloomed fully white petals trembling in the wind. You kneel beside the stone. You speak softly, not to the dog, to everyone. I remember. Then you stand and walk back into the town that once feared you, that now perhaps simply sees you, not as justice, not as judgment, but as a man. You wake to the sound of hammering, sharp, hurried, unfamiliar. Not the careful maintenance work of a carpenter, but the urgent thud of something being forced into place. You rise, dress, and step outside with a half-buttoned coat and the weight of foreboding in your ribs. Down the lane, just beyond the well, a new platform is being built. Not yours, not the scaffold. This one's smaller, raised only waist-high with a single post driven into its center. A whipping post. Crude, rushed. Splinters everywhere. The ropes haven't been measured properly. You find Matthias watching from the edge of the square, arms crossed, brow low. "They didn't ask," he says. "Didn't even tell me." You both know what that means. The mayor's council, whatever remains of it, is trying to take punishment back into their own hands. No blade, no ritual, no executioner. Just pain, public and fast. You walk over to inspect it. The craftsmanship is poor. A child could break the slats with a good kick, but it's not about durability, it's about theater. This was built for shouting, for humiliation. Someone behind you clears their throat. You turn. It's a clerk you don't recognize. Thin, sour, wearing a quill behind one ear like a threat. "You're not required here," he says quickly. "The mayor's approved a sentence, minor theft, first offense. No need for the axe." You glance at the post again. Then you ask, "And who swings the lash?" He shrugs. "Volunteer guard." You say nothing. But you don't move. The boy they bring forward is young, 12, maybe 13. Thin wrists, hollow eyes. He stole 2 loaves from the winter storehouse. Claims his family hasn't eaten in 3 days. The guard steps forward with the whip. It's badly made, frayed, and damp from the morning mist. Matthias whispers, "This isn't punishment. It's a message." You nod. You step forward and raise a hand. "Stop." The crowd murmurs. The guard hesitates. You walk to the platform, not fast, not angry, just inevitable. You remove the whip from the guard's hand. He doesn't resist. You turn to the clerk. "This is not how we do things." The clerk opens his mouth, closes it again, then scurries off to find someone with more authority. You untie the boy. He doesn't thank you, doesn't look at you. He just runs. You leave the whip on the platform and walk away. That night, there's a note nailed to your door. You've overstepped. The council will meet. You smile a little, because it means they noticed. You attend the council meeting the next day. The mayor's not there. The others argue. You don't. You just listen. When it's your turn to speak, you say this: if you want pain, build your post. If you want order, build your laws. If you want justice, ask the one who has looked every dying man in the eye and still remembers their names. They don't respond. But a week later, the whipping post is gone. Burned. Quietly. Nothing replaces it. Later that month, something stranger happens. A woman arrives in town with a wagon of books and dried herbs. She asks where the executioner lives. Matthias sends her your way. Her name is Mira. She says she's a healer, a teacher, a widow. She says, I heard this town used to kill people every week. You nod. Used to. She stares at your hands, then asks, and what do you do now? You think about that. Then answer, I remember them. She nods once, then asks to rent the old stable near the stream. You help her clean it out. She sets up shelves, binds herbs, writes names on parchment tags and nails them to the wall. One day you stop by and find a child inside reading aloud while Mira tends to a jar of crushed mint. You raise an eyebrow. She says, history. He wanted to know who you were. You freeze. The child holds up a book, Lisette's manuscript. The man who remembers, he says proudly. You nod, and for the first time you feel the weight of a name, not as a blade or a mask, but as a thread. Something tying you not to guilt, but to memory. Later that night, you return to the meadow. There are more markers now. You didn't put them there. People have begun to mark their dead, even the condemned, even the forgotten. You kneel. You whisper one name, not yours, theirs, all of them. Then you stand and walk home. The smell hits you before the sound does smoke, but not the comforting kind of chimney fires or hearth bread. This is acrid, fast, wet wood catching badly in a rush of heat. You bolt upright from the bench outside your hut boots already half-laced. The sky is tinged orange and it's not from the sun. You run. It's the stable near the stream, Mira's place. By the time you arrive, half the building is already gone, consumed in ribbons of flame that snap and coil like angry tongues. Villagers form a frantic line from the well-passing buckets, hand to hand. Mira's on her knees, coughing into her shawl, soot streaked across her face, her eyes burning not from smoke but fury. You grab a pail and join the line. No hesitation, no command. It takes hours. But finally, the fire surrenders. What's left is blackened timber, charred shelves, soaked scrolls turned to pulp. Matthias arrives, breathless sleeves rolled to his elbows. Wasn't lightning, he says grimly. No storm, no sparks. You both know what that means. Someone lit it. Later, Mira finds you beside the stream, your sleeves still damp, eyes locked on the blackened remains. They burned what they feared, she says. You ask books or healing. She shrugs. What's the difference when people don't understand either? That evening, the mayor says nothing, nor does the council. No arrests, no investigations, just silence and ash. You sweep Mira's remaining items into crates. Some jars survived, some pages too. You offer her the space beside your hut for now. She accepts, but you know it's not about shelter, it's about defiance. That night, the town sleeps early. Except you. You sharpen your father's old axe. Not for use, for memory. Because sometimes memory needs to feel heavy in your hands to stay real. The next morning, a child delivers a folded paper. No seal, no name. Inside, a single sentence. They want you quiet again. You pin it beside the drawing on your mantle. Let them see it. Let them know you read it. But you don't change. You keep walking the streets. Keep visiting Mira. Keep listening when the townsfolk, some braver now, begin to stop you in private to whisper things like, "I didn't believe in what they did to her. My cousin helped build the gallows and now he can't sleep. I used to bring my children to watch. I'm sorry. You never ask for apologies, but you receive them, and you record them in a new journal. Not a ledger of names, but of moments. You title it After. Then one night a man tries to kill you. You're walking home from the edge of the meadow, boots slick with thawed mud. You hear a footstep too close, too fast. You turn, just in time to duck the swing of a knife. He's young, terrified, probably drunk. He says your name like a curse. You're why my brother died. You disarm him quickly. No injury, no anger, just the firm grip your father once taught you. He crumples, falls to his knees. I'm sorry, he says. You don't call the guard. You just walk him home. His mother cries when she sees you out of shame, not fear. You say nothing. Leave before the apology lands. But that night you bury your old gloves. Not burn, not discard. You bury them beneath the tree by nothing's grave. The tree is full of green now, small fruits beginning to bud. The soil is soft. You whisper something as you place the gloves in the earth. You don't say it out loud. You don't need to. The next day, Mira paints something on the side of her rebuilt stable. A sigil. It looks like a gallows, but upside down. A symbol repurposed, turned into a tree. The upside-down gallows begins to appear. First on Mira's stable, then etched quietly into a bench outside the baker's, then scratched into the side of a barrel near the well. Subtle, faint, but deliberate. A tree born of rope and punishment. A mark that means something, though no one says what. Not out loud. You watch without interfering. You're not its creator. But you are perhaps its reason. A symbol of survival, they call it. Of change. Of a town that no longer needs as much blood to stay quiet. And still you sharpen your blade, just in case. Because peace is fragile. It has a short memory. And fear is always searching for a foothold. One night a stranger comes to town. Again. He wears no colors, carries no sword. But his presence is heavy the way wolves are heavy in a clearing, even when they haven't bared their teeth. He rents a room above the tavern, observes the town square, says little, pays in coin with no crest. Matthias tells you first. He's not here for trade, he mutters, and not for stories. You nod. By the end of the week, the stranger sends for you. You meet him in the tavern's back room. It smells of old beer and meat smoke. The fire is too low. The window is open enough to make the draft feel intentional. He doesn't stand, just gestures. Sit. You don't. He grins. Of course. You stand for most things, don't you? You wait. He continues. I represent people who prefer order over curiosity, control over sentiment. You raise an eyebrow. He adds, your methods have attracted attention. You've stayed your hand. You've spared pain. You've let words replace the whip. That doesn't sit well with some. You say, then they're free to choose someone else. He leans in. But that's the problem. They can't. You've made yourself irreplaceable. And now people are watching you instead of the law. There it is. You've become a symbol, a quiet rebellion in black gloves. He slides a parchment across the table. Resign. Leave quietly. The position will be filled. No shame, no pursuit, just removal. You look down at the paper. Your name is already printed on it. You ask, and if I don't, his smile fades. Then the town learns you were never a servant, just a man with power. You step back from the table. You don't take the paper, but you take the moment. Then you leave. Outside, the sky is bruised with stormlight. Thunder murmurs low over the hills. The scent of rain lingers. You walk through the town as the first drops fall. You pass the baker who nods silently. The smith who leaves a hammer on the stump and tips his cap. The children don't run from you now. They wave. You arrive at the chapel. You haven't gone inside in months, but tonight you do. It's empty save for the flicker of a few tired candles. You kneel not for forgiveness, just for stillness. You think of the rope, the sword, the men and women and children who watched, who remembered, who whispered your name like it was made of iron and ash. And then you rise. You walk back into the storm and find Mira waiting by your door. I heard, she says. You nod. I have an idea. She opens her coat and pulls out something wrapped in linen. You unwrap it carefully. It's a mask, but not a shame mask. Not the hood. It's carved of wood, sanded smooth, painted the color of smoke. Expressionless, save for the faintest suggestion of a mouth. Not a smile, not a frown. Just a line. Balanced. Human. Wear it if they come, she says. Let them see their reflection. You nod. You hang it beside the old hood. That night you write again. Your hand steadier now. You begin with a sentence you never thought you'd commit to ink. If they force me to choose between silence and shadow, I will speak even if it's with my absence. In the morning, the stranger is gone. Room empty, chair still warm. He left the resignation parchment on the floor, crumpled once, then flattened again. You burn it in the hearth, then walk to the square and stand, unarmed, unhooded, unmoved. No one speaks, but every pair of eyes watches you, and beneath the tavern eaves, a child carves the upside-down gallows into the mud with a stick. You begin to notice something peculiar. No one refers to you by your title anymore. Not executioner, not headsman. Not even the mocking names, the fearful ones. You've become a presence, not a role. People say things like, ask him, or he'll know what to do. As if your very existence has shifted, melted into something larger than identity, like an old wall no longer seen, only leaned on. You're not sure if it feels like freedom or erasure. Then one day, Mira suggests something strange. Let's plant something where the gallows stood. You blink. She's serious. Not a monument, not a plaque, a living thing, a tree. You agree, if only to see if the soil remembers. It does. The townsfolk gather, quiet, unsure. You dig the hole yourself. Matthias brings the sapling and elm, small but wiry. Mira presses a small bag of ash into the soil beside the roots. From my stable, she whispers. The smith brings nails, bent ones. The baker adds a wooden spoon cracked from years of use. The boy you once untied at the whipping post. He slips a small loaf hard as stone into the dirt. Everyone adds something broken, something endured. And then the tree is planted. No speeches, no fanfare, just earth. The next morning, a crow perches on the branches, not cawing, just watching. You don't shoo it. You bow your head. Life continues. Mira begins teaching openly. Children come, then mothers, then even a few old men who remember Latin only through psalms. The upside-down gallows becomes more frequent, chalked on doors, scratched on spoons, sewn into scarves. It spreads not like fire, but like roots. And one day, the mayor dies. Old age. Quiet. He never spoke against you after the last winter. The council dissolves without drama. No replacements, just space. People start settling their own disputes slowly, clumsily, but earnestly. The guard stands less frequently in the square, and more often beside farmers lifting bags of grain. Justice, like water, seems to have found new channels. You remain, not as a relic, but as a memory that walks. The axe is still hung behind your door, polished, sharp, but untouched. And then without warning, a caravan arrives. Traders from far beyond wearing colors you've never seen, speaking in patterns you haven't heard since childhood. They stop in town for a week, sell silks, glass, strange fruit, and stories. You listen to one of the older men as he describes a town across the sea where executioners are called the final listeners, where the condemned tell their truths and someone must carry those truths so they don't die unheard. You don't say anything. But later that night, you write the phrase into your journal. Final listener. The phrase tastes right, like soil and wind and closure. Years pass, the tree grows, Mira grows older, but not slower. Matthias begins teaching younger guards, though fewer are needed now. Children no longer flinch at the sound of boots. They ask you things. Like, were you really scary once you answer yes? Then you say, and then I wasn't. That seems to satisfy them. You begin sending pages of your journal beyond the town, wrapped in oilcloth, tied with twine, carried by traders. You never hear back, but you imagine somewhere someone is reading and wondering and maybe remembering. And then one autumn morning you wake to find the air different. Not colder, softer, like breath held. You step outside and see a circle of stones placed around the elm. Neat, thoughtful, fresh. No one claims them, but everyone walks past them with a kind of reverence. The crows have returned 3 now. They roost in the branches, watching, not ominous, just present. You sit beneath the tree that afternoon wrapped in your old coat, and when a boy passes by, he waves and calls out, "Good evening, listener." You smile, because he said it without fear, without mockery, as if it were the only word that ever fit. And now, as the candle burns low and the pages of this long, strange night curl at the edges with sleep, you find yourself slowing. The tree that once grew from rope and blood and memory sways gently in the hush of twilight. The wind is soft tonight, not a warning, but a lullaby. Even the crows seem quieter now, like sentinels grown old and wise. The village, once marked by fear and echoing with silence after every execution, has learned to breathe again. You too have changed, not erased, not hidden, but softened into something human. Something that carries stories instead of stones. The axe no longer gleams like a threat. The hood no longer waits by the door. What remains are the names you whispered, the lives you touched, the burdens you bore so others didn't have to. And as you sit beneath the tree, the upside-down gallows reborn, you realize something simple, something quiet. Even the darkest roles can lead to light if the bearer remembers to look up once in a while. So let your eyes close now. Let the past drift like ash in wind. Let the echoes fade into hush, into breath, into sleep. You've earned the quiet. You've remembered enough for tonight. End of script. Sweet dreams.